You ready now? Sorry.
3, 2, 1.
Hello, welcome back to the GODFOE Universe podcast. I am your co-host and co-creator of the GODFOE Universe, Josh Adams. I'm here with the other creator of the GODFOE Universe, Dan Evans, and we're going to be talking about some stuff that we really care about quite a bit. This is a big part of our life, has been for a long time, and I'm excited to dive into it. So what's our topic tonight, Dan?
I wanted to go into music, and not just a vague way, like music that has inspired or is currently inspiring our work.
Nice.
Yep. So,
All right.
I don't mind starting. The seeds of all of this started in like 2006, maybe
Mm-hmm.
2007. When I was like in bands and stuff, but I was driving home from dropping off like somebody, and like Marcy Playground's Sex and Candy came on the radio, and like a full blown like story comic like burst into my head from that, and that was, I didn't have a title for it. It had some working titles, but it was like about a detective who, when he was a veteran back in the day, like he touched like an artifact with like his friend in like Iraq, and
Mm-hmm.
he lost his arm and it was replaced with like this parasitic one from like an ancient god, and so he could see like spirits and stuff, and so he was solving like not supernatural crime but like putting down like supernatural entities as he found them affecting the real world,
Mm-hmm.
and it grew from there, and he ended up like with this like vampire chick, and that was all tied together. It turns out like that whole race that was called vampires, like that was their god that had bridged like a way into our world to devour it, that he had found,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to deal with that. And that title eventually became Apollyon 20XX, but I didn't write that story. I wrote it in
That's
college
crazy.
because like we had a program, an English program that was like, hey, make a playlist and write like a story to it. So I laid out every beat for like a playlist, and I turned it in, and the teacher was like, the professor was like, no, you didn't understand the assignment. I meant like tell a story like about the songs. But like everyone that read my paper was like, I really want to read this story. So I just
Well,
told her I
it's like
wouldn't. I just told her I wouldn't redo it, and ended up getting like a C.
like music. Yeah, music definitely has always had that ability to suggest a story, even if the lyrics themselves are not like necessarily explicitly telling a story, or even telling the same story that it inspires. I mean, if we go all the way back, like all music, we've talked about how music is probably the most tribal and uh, I don't even know the most
Primitive,
natural,
primal,
yeah,
visceral.
primal type of expression. But like even like we think about classical music, they didn't even have lyrics and yet still told stories very well. And you know, growing up, I loved any artist that ever that put out like a concept album. Usually, I was
Yeah,
really intrigued by albums that had a story behind them or a story inside of them. Rush did that really well. Um, I remember Alice Cooper had several albums that I loved growing up that told a loose story. Um, and like even groups like I listened to a lot of heavy metal and I loved Iced Earth, and he had like an enormous story that began in they had an album called Something Wicked This Way Comes, which
like
it
from the
kind of
book. Yeah,
yeah, but like their version of that, they took that title, but that was the beginning of a storyline that they told over the course of many albums. Ray Bradbury about the Antichrist and like their version of the end of the world and the Antichrist, and like it began with the last three tracks on that album and carried on through several albums after that. Coheed and Cambria is
Yeah,
another group that did an awesome job of like
Queensryche, Operation
yeah,
Mindcrime.
Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime did that. So yeah, like that idea of music being able to, if not explicitly tell, then at least suggest a story is something that I think a lot of musicians have been able to do.
Yeah, like
So that's cool.
music is at the very least a conversation, and
Hmm.
at the best it's a story, because and
Hmm.
that's the physics of it and the metaphysics of it. I mean, it's literally when you play like a chord, it's about where it's going, or a melody,
Hmm.
and not where it is. And I actually put a video of that Jacob Collier guy talking about this, and I mean, he's not a good communicator, so he kind of fumbled over it, but he was trying to say like people think like chords are weird, like, and he played like some kind of like 13th or flat seventh or something jazz chord, and he's like, well, it's about like where it's going, and what he was trying to say is that like you don't
Hmm.
think of things stagnantly. Music's never stagnant, and he was like
Right.
he's talking about thinking linearly instead of vertically, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean that's what music. I'm not trying to rip the guy because he's a prodigy, he's brilliant, but like he
Right.
was just taking a long time to say basically the basics of music. But yeah, the problem is a lot of modern music. I'm not going to go off on that tangent, but like because of like people think of it in boxes because of Pro
Hmm.
Tools and the digital age. It's not really what you're seeing is a grid and not seeing it like as a conversation where it's going and flowing. A lot of modern music just doesn't flow well.
Right. Well, and I think too, like even just from the idea of lyrics and things like that, you go back to the old balladeers and cowboy ballads and stuff of just telling stories through songs, and back in the ancient days, you had heroes and kings and wars, and their stories were told by bards, right?
Yeah,
You had people who sang their deeds. Like, using music to chronicle a story is something that's, we it goes back even further than the Bible with the
yeah,
Psalms, and even Moses and others in the old, very ancient Old Testament wrote songs to
yeah. Exodus.
share those stories,
Give
to
me,
express the stuff that was happening.
yeah, give me just a second. I'll be right back.
All right, fine.
All right. Yeah. Um, Exodus has like those like songs of praise usually that detail a triumphant
Mm-hmm.
victory or something like coming through the Red Sea. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, music. I don't know. It's to me, it's the easiest way to pull emotion out of people and for people and express things and make people feel. To me, it's the easiest way to converse. I think if you want to get a
Well, I
message
mean,
across, yeah,
you think about like your movie scores and things like that. If you ever watch a lot of these movies that are so celebrated, and if you watch them without a soundtrack, you realize, wow, that acting and everything else really doesn't carry anywhere near as much weight as the soundtrack in the background does.
yeah, you can
Like,
actually
a
have.
score is what really
It's what sells it.
conveys more than the acting does.
Yeah, you can have even like subpar acting, subpar writing, but the scores good, people are at least going to feel something.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
100%.
but anyway, switching back to more personal with it. So I shared that. I'm not trying to get into like. I was trying really hard not to get off on topic of music and bands. Trying to keep it
Mm-hmm.
strictly to like what is in relation to what inspires us. So, do you remember what you were like when we first started talking about this stuff a couple of years ago? What you were into, like what helped you get into writing or drawing it and stuff? I mean,
As far as from a music standpoint,
mm-hmm.
having a hmm. Well, it's I mean, it might be different for me because as an artist and a writer, but more of an artist than a writer. A lot of times for me, there's a combination or a conversation even that happens with music and album cover art.
Yeah,
So, like, a big thing for me, and I know you're a fan of this album too, was the third Danzig album,
yeah.
and
How the
that
gods kill.
yeah, that Giger album cover that he had on that, and you know I associate the music and the art, and both of those things come together to be a very inspirational thing. Um, I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan, and at the time that we started all this, I was very much of an Iron Maiden fan. And there again, Eddie, the mascot. For those of you who aren't familiar with Iron Maiden, they're a metal band, but their mascot is this kind of. He's in some ways he's a zombie type character, but he takes on the persona of a lot of different characters
Yeah,
with the different
whatever the
albums.
theme of the album is.
Right, and like he as a visual
Mm-hmm.
was a huge impact on me. Like, I remember drawing Eddie all over my notebooks in school as a kid. So that idea of something that's iconic, and then being able to take that iconic image and associate it with some music that's equally legendary, I think is it's I don't know how you could not be inspired by something like that, to be able to take an image and a song and put those things together and put an image in people's head is something so awesome. Even going further back than that, the first time I heard Nazareth Hair the Dog
Yeah,
alongside that
that album
album art
cover.
that has that, like, just Frank Frazetta almost style, Ralph Bakshi animation style. Like, it's a album cover unlike anything else. Like,
Well,
it's a
and the album
unique
lives up to it. That's what's so harsh. Like that's
hundred
like a
percent,
lot of
100%.
like Molly Hatchet never lived up to their album covers.
Nah, but Nazareth, 1000% Nazareth did. So, like, yeah, I think about a lot of it for me was stuff like that, and the whole judging a book by its cover. I always judged an album by its cover,
It's hard not
and
to, you
sometimes
know.
that, yeah, it's really hard not to, and sometimes you find that perfect marriage of visuals and the sound and the content, and those are the bands that make you sit back and say, all right, I want to create something. I don't know what, but I want to create something that feels like this does.
Yeah,
9 Inch Nails was like that for me.
yeah. He always had good album covers. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's how.
And videos.
Not to get self promotiony, but like with Colin, when I saw his work, that's what got me making Witching Hour. It's like that
Mm-hmm.
when I saw that, basically the forest he took, I was like, okay, I can make music that sounds like that looks, and it
Right.
gave a
Right.
direction. I think that's an underrated thing. I think that's almost a lost art, is the intersection of music and visual on every scale. I was thinking about
Mm-hmm.
this. I was talking about this with the band guys this weekend, because we had a band weekend for Blue Bolt. I was talking with Andy, our bassist, and I was like, man, like music videos, that technology and those ideas weren't made to film some guy on YouTube playing in his room. Like,
Right.
and I make we take a lot of shots at YouTube bands, like especially cover guys. It's like bands that all they do is cover songs, like like, oh, we'll cover a Taylor Swift song like it's metal or whatever, and it's just like
Right.
four guys playing in a room, and it's like this isn't art, man. Like, it's not bad, it's a
No.
fun little thing, but like Radiohead made like cool music videos, you know. Nine Inch
Well, I
Nails
think
made really
about,
cool
like,
videos.
Tool, man.
Yeah, Tool
You can't
made
even
really
hardly
good
get better
music
than
videos.
Tool. And, like, you'd look at a Tool video, and, like, I didn't even know what they looked like for years,
Yeah,
like, because
nobody
they're not in
did.
the videos playing. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're not in those videos playing live, or it wasn't about the artist. It was about the art. And I think anytime a musician or a band or whatever can make it where it's the art itself that's out front and not them,
mm-hmm.
I have a lot of respect for that. Like, I always thought it was cool how the Gorillas did that.
Yeah,
Just had animated avatars that took, that so that they weren't the ones out in front.
yeah, and then but see, that's considered like a new idea, but that's the oldest idea. That goes back to like shamans putting on masks and robes and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Like that,
Yeah, no
yeah.
theater in Japan and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah, that's a very old
Is to be a medium
idea.
for what they used to think were spirits.
Right.
For whatever you think it is. Like I think that's the importance of everything is of all medium of art is that it should. I believe in complete separation of art and the artist. I
Mm-hmm.
don't.
I agree.
Yeah, I think I don't think art is subjective. I think it's objective of what it is itself. And then I think
Right.
secondary to that is artist intent. And then
Yeah.
third is what it means to people and how it makes you feel. But I don't believe in the death of the artist crap. Like, I've never subscribed to that. Oh, because he's dead, we can make it mean whatever we want. It's like, no, it means what it means. And then the secondary, it
Mm-hmm.
means what he intended it to mean. And then, you see what I'm saying? But,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
there's a hierarchy of that stuff.
to
And
keep us
when
on
you look
track.
at
Sorry, I'm not going to interrupt you, but go ahead. Finish
no,
that
you're
thought.
good. Go for it.
To keep us
No,
on track.
I don't have one.
I was just going to talk. I'm just going to talk. People forget Josh is a preacher. He's good at just getting up and coming up with something. How was Jesus like Oppenheimer? um, to keep us on track, when I was writing writing the novel, The Shaper, the Shifter, the Shadow, coming out hopefully this year or next year, just whenever it's finished, guys. Just whenever we want to release it. I listened to Metallica's S&M album like every day because it was
That's a great one.
so grandiose and cool. It wasn't even the mixture of metal and orchestra; is that it was live, so it felt way more organic than even
Yeah,
than
the
like
energy of it.
yeah, it felt
Yeah.
better than like Apocalyptica and those kind of stuffs that do that same kind of thing. Which none of those really do
Mm-hmm.
thrash. Like it's just a cool thing. It's raw and it's
Mm-hmm.
real. But I listened to that album. My goodness, I would just go to a coffee shop because I was living in where I'm living now, which is kind of a pretentious city, and I would get off work. I would put that on. I was by myself, and I would just write because I had to rewrite. I wrote the ending of that book, which was most of it, like 3 or 4 times. And the only way I was able to do that was just putting on that, a lot of Tool, a lot of Lateralus,
Mm.
and 10,000 Days, and just like killing the outside world, just doing that.
And see, when if I'm in the mood to just if I'm making art, if I'm drawing and I want that inspiration and I want the background music to happen. I can't listen to something that has lyrics because I'll get I'm too ADD, so I'll get too focused on on the words and singing and thinking, and that gets me out. So for me, I listen to scores a lot, and
Yeah,
particularly I love the old Ennio Morricone scores from the like spaghetti westerns, like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
yeah.
Those kinds of I love anything that Morricone did. So a lot of times I'll put on one of those albums or just soundtrack scores and listen to that. I'll listen to the score from Mad Max
Mm-hmm.
Fury Road a good bit.
Anything
Um,
that's not Hans Zimmerman or whatever his name is.
yeah, there you go.
I want something with a melody,
But
Dan.
yeah, yeah, I listen to stuff like that a good bit in the background, and it's very inspirational to me. It's just
Yeah,
I don't know, it makes you feel things.
yeah. A lot of times I don't work while listening to stuff. That one was because I literally had nowhere to go. I couldn't go to where I was
Mm,
staying, and I had to get rid of the outside world. Um,
mm-hmm.
but most of the time, 90% of the time, I don't listen to anything while I'm working. But my biggest um, chunks of inspiration come from just hearing like a song, and I'll listen to it for like 3 days straight, and then entire
Mm-hmm.
stories just build out. Um, I know, and it's usually like weird. It's like I know that album by Tattoo, 200 kilometers mile per hour in the wrong lane. I think I
Mm-hmm.
did. My gosh, I bought that album and I listened to that, which is a funny thing because people like usually make fun of you for listening to that. But
Yeah, but it was
yeah, I mean, I did the Crimson City Crusader, which is something that's coming out later, guys. I did all of that to that. I did a lot of the book to that. I think to that. I know I did like a lot of 20XX to that, and
that's cool.
I forget like a bunch of other ones, man. Like like I used to have like an entire playlist, and I can pull them up, but it's usually something out of left field. It's usually something that's
Mm-hmm.
not in my normal rotation of music that just grabs on. Like, my advice for people is if something inspires you, like indulge it, like until
Well,
it's
I
like
mean,
gum, chew it till it's not flavorful anymore.
how would you like would how do you feel about like the ancient like I guess it was the Greek myth like the idea of a muse
Oh yeah, I think that's
and
totally
how
like a real thing.
yeah I don't think it was a spirit
Yeah,
necessarily, but yeah, the idea of yeah, that inspiration, that source of inspiration. I know for me, and this might sound weird or it might not actually, because it actually kind of makes a lot of sense to me. But
yeah,
for me, one of my biggest muse when I'm trying to get into the headspace to work on stuff with Kolga is like Stevie Nicks, man.
yeah. I
Like
could see that.
if I put on Fleetwood Mac and like a song like Dreams, and like that puts me in the headspace of Kolga
Yeah,
like instantly.
mine. What started the whole Biofile series was I watched True Detective, and a
Yeah, yeah,
lot of the
yeah.
songs from that soundtrack launched the Biofile initiative. Um, a lot of uh, Tool's 10,000 Days did a lot of that. A lot of Simon and Garfunkel, particularly their creepier stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
Scarborough Fair and Sound of Silence, before it was a meme, before Five Finger Death Punch or
Yep.
whoever covered it, Disturbed covered it. But a lot
Mm-hmm.
of that kind of at the time like neo pagan esque stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like those songs they would find and like redo or whatever, and really try to creep people out with it. That like I guess kind of Stevie Nicks because she had that mystique about her, that weird
Yeah,
yeah
she was witchy. Yeah,
yeah
she was
that
witchy.
kind of stuff. But I don't yeah I don't she didn't I don't think until maybe later tap into actual witch paraphernalia. It's just there's something mystical and spiritual there, which is what set her
Mm-hmm.
apart, other than her voice. Um,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
she had that I don't know, an aura about
she
her.
did, especially for a grossly insecure person. I don't mean that's an insult. It's just when you like read
No,
her
but you're
stuff, yeah,
right.
like she carried a very powerful and mystical aura about her. And a lot of people have that are in. I mean, Prince kind of has something like that, like a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's being that close. I talk about this a lot with people, but I kind of see art or artists like a spectrum or like kind of like a chain. Um, and you've got like chaos over here, and then you've got like strict super order over here. You've got to be tethered to this like order, but you've got to be here in chaos. You can't be lost in it. You can't
Mm-hmm.
untether yourself, but you've got to
Mm-hmm.
live on or be able to go in that brink, gather it, and bring it over and force it into order.
And to be fair, I think that's why a lot of the greatest of artists kind of end up losing their minds later in life
Yeah, I think you spend too much
because
time in
some of
it,
them
it'll mess you up.
get yeah get. But like I mean, I had the first time I ever saw a picture of Alan Moore back in the day,
Yeah.
like when he was Swamp Thing, and I was like, God, this man's a
Well,
wizard.
he is into like
He's a wizard,
he
Harry.
he is into magic with a K. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think what's his name, Grant or whatever, one of those. What's the writer?
Grant
Morrison.
Morrison.
I think he's into that too. And I think the only thing that kept Morris sane again was that he was actually a good writer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, if you're not tethered, because we all know that, or at least I did. I knew tons of guys who could be good artists.
Yeah.
But they lived in chaos. They couldn't put two thoughts together. They
Mm-hmm.
were so creative they just couldn't do anything with it. So they spoke
Yep.
and they made gibberish. And
Mm-hmm.
to me that's not
Or the
creative.
opposite.
Yeah, I knew the
Yeah, or the
opposite too.
opposite is true. They have an incredible grasp of the technical, concrete side,
Yeah.
but they can't write a song to save their life.
Yeah, or come up with anything other than the same
Original.
it's the same YA novel over and over and over. Those are the people you see on YouTube and in every
Yeah.
genre. I'm not trying to be mean, but like the professional field is dominated by creatives who aren't creative, because
Right.
it's a system. It's a, how do you make this? How do you make product? Indie comics is the same way. There are
Right.
tons of indie comics guys that are technically okay or technically good. Their book, no one's going to care about their book in 20 years.
Yeah.
But I think I think music is closer to that chaos than a lot of other forms of art, which is why it inspires so many forms.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Especially when you get into certain genres like jazz or even like classical. I know people think about classical music as being, oh, it's very structured, but man, sometimes some of those compositions are
yeah,
dance into chaos, like
yeah.
really
Well,
far across that line.
that's why people don't know this. That's why Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven were so prolific, is because they were doing things that no one had done before, and doing things so worse. They were doing it so well. Like Mozart was
Mm-hmm.
thinking of things every single day that no one had thought of, and then orchestrating it in a way no one had orchestrated before. And then
Mm-hmm.
Beethoven, who I would argue was just as technically proficient, some people wouldn't, but he was so much emotion. I mean, if you really listen to Beethoven, everybody knows the fifth, but like, man, like the fifth rocks, like, and those guys were, especially Beethoven, were pouring like their souls onto pages in the medium they
Mm-hmm.
knew how.
And it's one of those things where, you see these troubled artists, people like Van Gogh, who was not successful in his own lifetime, and you look at some of these people, there was so much of them on that other side of the line. That was the only thing that was keeping them alive, was making art.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's kind of comes with the territory. I mean, you and I have talked about that before. The creativity, like having that, if that were to be stifled somehow,
mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not sure what I would do,
Yeah.
to be perfectly
That's the
honest.
worst. That's the worst fate. That's the worst
You
thing
know,
to think about.
but at the same time, you look at some of the science fiction and some of the music and some of the stuff that's come out of totalitarian states,
Yeah,
where it was so sequestered, and it was so heavily censored and so
yeah,
heavily,
busted.
uh you know yeah, and some of the stuff that came out of that is some of the most mind-blowing art that's ever been created, because they were working under that tension, knowing that it could cost them everything, but they still had to do it. They
Yeah,
couldn't not create.
I think to go back on track, because I would love to go off on like a 3 hour conversation. I'm just trying to be better at keeping us myself in particular. Myself in particular. Um, I've seen a lot of people talk about like the stuff they listen to while they work, and I'm not trying to be
Mm-hmm.
mean, but it's like a lot of the stuff. It sounds like stuff you would assume that you're supposed to listen to while you work, and
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I think a lot of people, especially artists, aren't are lying to themselves. I think they're not true. It's like, man, if you find something that like jolts you, like ride that jolt until you're immune to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think inspiration is something you seek out. I think that's a mistake a lot of artists make. You don't go looking for something to inspire you. Something either
Yeah.
does or it doesn't. Um,
Yeah, I agree.
Especially with music, because I mean, I went through that phase briefly as a younger guy, especially as a musician, where you go looking for something and you're usually just let down or disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the
Well,
more
and
you
you'll
build it
have
up in
people
your
tell you,
head.
man, you've got to
Yeah,
listen to this. It's gonna change your life, and then you do, and it's like,
this sucks.
I I, I don't get it. I
Yeah,
don't get it. And maybe that's okay. Maybe for them it was.
yeah,
Like, it's okay. It just didn't work for me.
yeah. Um, I do think inspiration is subjective like that. I think that is supposed to be objective, because I think that is
Yeah.
the thing itself. However you want to go into it, appealing to a person. That's what they used to think muses were. Like
Right.
you courted a muse. So you put yourself in a position to be humble for it and to come to it. But in the same way, it also had to be appealed to. It also appealed to you. It
Right.
would also call to you, and that's actually something that's in the Proverbs. I don't know it's maybe it's Ecclesiastes, but I know it's probably a metaphor, whatever. But like, it talks about wisdom calling in the
Yeah.
in
Well,
the
yeah. That's
streets,
that. Yeah.
and that's more of
That's
a lament. Yeah, it's more of
Ecclesiastes,
a
and
lamentations of no one is wise and everything's going to crap. Yeah,
right. Well, and yeah, Solomon personified
yeah,
wisdom as a woman, in that book.
yeah. But it's a
But
good.
yeah, that's
It's an
interesting.
apt
It's a
description
good
though.
metaphor, though.
Yeah,
It is. It is.
yeah. Something
You
wanting
have
to
to
be
pursue.
found,
You have to court it.
wanting. Yeah, something wanting to benefit you, something want or benefit the world
Mm-hmm.
by being born.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. 100%.
I think I know for Apollyon, I really started and kept up with a lot of that. Oh, the hush sound. And this is a more obscure one. They're like a indie. They got lumped in with emo when it came out, but they weren't. They put out a
Hmm.
song called or an album. Let me see if I can find it.
I'm not familiar with them. I'm looking them up right now.
It wasn't like Vines. They broke up, but give me just a second, guys. The Hush Sound had an album. I think it's the last one they put out before they
Goodbye
broke up.
Blues.
Goodbye Blues. That album has like 3 songs on it that are just killer. I mean, it's a good album, but it's like you can tell that they're a band torn between like the two writers. The main guy,
Mm-hmm.
the main male singer, the male female singer, you can tell they're kind of torn between. He's kind of more playful, and she's like the John Lennon, but actually talented. But the intro, it's a great album. Everybody should listen to it. It's Goodbye Blues by the Hush Sound. But I wrote Apollyon, both examples of Apollyon 20XX, the original idea that wasn't part of
Mm-hmm.
that predated the GODFOE universe, and our current one to this album. The intro, um, the song That's Okay, and the song Hurricane are like just three. Like the first one sounds like an apocalyptic bomb raid is going off, and then
Dang.
the other ones are kind of like heartbreak songs, and like they are so packed with like beauty and emotion. It's just got this really heavy melancholy, like dressing over almost what's what I'm looking for, like uh uh ragtime piano.
Hmm.
It's a quirky album that isn't. I think if the guy had written it, it would have been like tongue in cheek, quirky. I don't know my emotions, but because she was there, really weighing it down with that melancholy, it's just a beautiful, beautiful album. So yeah, that one. I mean,
Hmm.
I've been writing to that album for like 10, 15 years.
And I had never heard of it, so I'm looking forward to listening to that later this week.
Yeah, the main highlights are the intro, Hurricane, and That's Okay. But
Okay. Check them
um,
out.
yeah,
I've
that just
always
out of my
loved
head.
when I hear something that sounds completely different
Yeah,
from what I'm used to hearing. That's always something that shocks me out of my comfort zone, and that usually leads to me thinking of something I'd like to create too. White Zombie did that back in the day. Like I know Rob
yeah,
Zombie kind of became very, you know, cliche or whatever after a while, but man, when Astro Creep 2000 came out, dude, that nothing else really sounded like that. That was a crazy album to listen to back in the day.
yeah.
I drew so many pictures just listening to that.
I
Nothing worth looking at, but I drew a lot of pictures.
well, going back to him, Tool was a big thing for it. Discovering Tool,
Yeah,
they
it's
totally live
impossible
up
to
to the hype. I
overstate
don't
them.
care. They totally live up to the fanboy hype. Um,
Yeah.
discovering them changed how I viewed art completely, like in everything, and I literally became meditative because of them.
Mm-hmm.
In everything. But that, I mean, of course, I'm trying to avoid the other things like anime played just as big a part as music did, but
Oh
I'm
yeah,
trying
of
to save
course.
that topic, of course. But yeah, the things that are kind of unsettling, like Lana Del Rey, um, Ultraviolence, like that album
Hmm.
did a lot for me because every time I put it on, it feels like there's something standing over your shoulder. It's just
I
it's
liked
so cinematic.
I really liked a guy named Steve Von Till. He was from the band Neurosis.
Mm-hmm.
He put out several solo albums that are this haunting, very stripped down, very sad, dark, gothic folk music. Just him, his voice and the guitar is all there is to it. It's very stripped down, but
Yeah, send me that.
like it, I will. It's got a lot of the same tone and environment and atmosphere that later Johnny Cash had.
Yeah,
It's really good stuff. But he has his album. I think it's Death Rides a Grim Horse was so
man,
good.
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'll send that to you. I'll send
Um,
it to you. It's really good.
this is who predated Tool for me and really kind of started cracking open because I mean I remember when the internet was new and like YouTube was new and getting new music that you didn't know was new because people don't realize that like Napster and LimeWire wasn't great if you didn't know what you wanted. Like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like an aggregate where you could just kind of go and search for stuff, you know. But
Yep.
um, Bear McCreary, who did the soundtrack, he did a lot of soundtracks, I think, but he did it for the new Battlestar Galactica.
Oh
Man,
yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
was so good. Like anything he does is good, and especially he did all along the Watchtower for that album slash show, and that it's one of the I don't know. To me, it's better than the Hendrix version. Um,
Yeah, it's a great version.
yeah, that one. I still am playing riffs in Blue Bolt that I ripped off that song. um, but his introduct he not introduced he infused Eastern themes in ways that like people have wished they had since like the Beatles or whatever. Like it wasn't over the top. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that kind of steals a lot of times when people try to put an idea in or they try to blend genres. It's just so overhanded or heavy handed, I should
Mm-hmm.
say. He knew how to do it really, really, really well. And he was a young guy too. I think he's like only 40 something now. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, he was born in 79. My goodness, he's only a few years older than you.
Lucky
Why you
guy.
no doctor yet?
Why you so sad?
And I might get in trouble for this one, but I'm not gonna lie. Um,
I
someone
know where it's coming.
I don't know, but anyway, um, someone whose music recently has inspired me and broke me out, and maybe it's partly because it's kind of don't touch, is Boyd Rice, the guy who did the band Non, and it was kind of like a precursor to Nine Inch Nails and stuff, and it's like really industrial, really experimental, especially at the time, really
Okay, I
white
thought you were
noise.
about to go with Antichrist Superstar.
No, I don't. That's not controversial. Nobody cares about that. But yeah, Antichrist Superstar. But see, this guy influenced a lot of Manson. But
Right.
Antichrist Superstar is a wonderful record. Yeah, that one influenced me a lot too, just because of like the even though he was being the anti of it, at least Manson had a reverence for religion. Um, you see what I'm saying? At least he
Yeah,
treated
for
it as
sure.
something that was powerful.
Right.
Which to me is way better than a completely cynical view. Because
Yeah, I
whether you
agree.
believe in pick any religion, whether you believe in it or not, it carries weight with it. And
Right.
not to go off on a tangent, trying to keep, but I think a major problem we have with art is people don't believe in that weight of religion. They don't utilize it properly, so they just get crap. But I, I that's a whole topic. But I think we talking the other day, Josh, and I was like, we really like anime and we really like manga, but we're really glad we're not super inspired by shonen because
Yeah.
every, everything that kind of comes out, especially on the American side, that loves it is very shonen-y. And there's nothing wrong with shonen, but there kind of is when you're trying to mimic it. When like the best anime carry like a heavy philosophical idea, it doesn't have to be existentialism. It doesn't have to be any of that, but they carry ideas more than just kid wants to be the best or be accepted.
Yeah,
So
kid doesn't have ability, gains ability.
anyway, I'll pass it back to you. Though I've talked a lot.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of your end of stuff was more, I guess, some of the more the industrial or alternative side of stuff. I listened to a lot of, a lot of heavy metal and a lot of country music, but really all alternative country. So stuff like, like Whiskey Town back before Ryan Adams had a solo career and stopped being talented, and like I liked Wilco a lot, Sonvolt, things like that. Um, I loved anything. Man, I was really big on power metal.
Yeah.
So like I loved like Blind Guardian and Hammerfall, groups like that, Jag Panzer, Iced Earth, all those groups, because they all talk
All those
about.
guys in prison from January 6th now.
That's just one
It's just
guy.
one
That's just
guy.
one of them. It's just John Shaver, although he's the main guy. He's the only he writes all their songs. But I loved how big the themes were.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that for people who don't listen to metal, there I don't think you can argue that genre of music understands imagery and themes better than probably any other genre does.
Yeah, it picked up classical when classical wasn't cool anymore. That's what metal is.
Yeah, 100%. And love them or hate them, groups like Slipknot 100% knew how to create an aesthetic experience.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
whether it's one that you found pleasant or not is debatable, but they knew how to create a arresting visual
Yeah.
and music that backed it up and matched it. And the same thing was true of Black Sabbath back in the day. The same thing was true of Maiden. The same thing was true of Metallica, especially back during the you know Master of Puppets era. So a lot of that's the type of stuff that I really got down to and still do.
I for the overarching GODFOE universe idea, a lot of that was like science. A lot of that was like religion and science fiction. And
Hmm.
what's funny is we're talking about music being an influence, but what I found lacking, even with like people I enjoyed, like Rush and Coheed and Cambria, is that they would be really great on the music end, and no offense, but pretty weak on the story end.
Yeah,
Which
yeah, I
which
agree.
yeah, which Rush never tried to expand outside of their stuff until like Clockwork Angels with the book, and the book wasn't bad, but I mean,
No, it
I didn't
wasn't bad,
finish
but it
it.
wasn't. It wasn't as good as the album.
Yeah, and Coheed and Cambria, dude is a prolific lyricist and songwriter and musician, but he wasn't. He's not a great storyteller. He wasn't, because I read his comics, and
Right, I
anytime
agree.
they wouldn't have passed even for like today's standards of comics. I mean, they're a little bit better than some of today's comics. But when you have to like when you're like 5 pages in, and you're like, what's happening? You know,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not trying to
And
beat it into the yeah.
it didn't help that the artists that he hired weren't very good either.
Yeah, it was like the one he did for like Good Apollo with like the devil bike. He
Hmm.
was good, but the story. But yeah, those
Yeah.
first ones, you're right, were not super great. But that most of what I'm inspired by in everything is being disappointed in what I liked and wanting to do it better. Um, so yeah, there's a lot. I think music still has a lot of untapped potential and crossover with influence to story. I think we've lost that connection. I think we enjoy things and then try to make things, but don't really try to aspire to incarnate and birth ideas anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, and part of that's because it takes too long. I mean, look, we spent a decade building this GODFOE universe, and it's still just starting to come out.
Yeah, yeah, but that's the thing.
It's the incubation period.
I always forget their name. They were a witch house band. Purity Ring. Have you listened to Purity Ring?
No.
Listen to their very first album called Shrines.
Okay.
That whole album is perfect, man. You put that on, it's gonna creep you out in the best way. That was a huge influence for me on a lot of the writing, on from day one, because
Okay.
especially Kolga, man. Yeah, listen to Purity Ring
I
Shrines.
just added
Yeah,
it to my library. I'll definitely check it out.
it's to me, I mean, I don't know. It's one of the best electronically made albums ever. Like the guy who produced it is in the band. He's just like they're like from Canada. They were like this unknown. It's like a guy and a girl. He does everything and he syncs his MIDI with this light installation that he built and he plays live. He's just like this
That's
crazy
crazy.
prolific dude. And
Nice.
yeah, but yeah, guys, check out Purity Ring. I did not care for their second album. I hadn't heard the third one. I don't think they can live up to that first one, but that first one, Shrines, is it's scary and chill and cool. And I don't know, very few albums can make you like disconnect from your life.
Paranoid.
Yeah, well that yeah, but like take you to another world. You know what I mean?
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. Um, I'm trying, man. I'm digging through for this. I'm really because like there's some stuff that like I've been listening to for like 15 years that just keeps.
I used to love listening to the Toadies, man. I can still
Or
pull
like
that
Possum
out.
Kingdom.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Milk toast and stuff.
yeah. Uh, Dinosaur Jr. Oh, who was it? Dinosaur Jr. was one of them. They really kicked off a lot of stuff for me.
I
Uh,
love Faith No More and KMFDM. Both of
yeah,
those were good groups.
yeah.
Faith No More, especially the uh, what was the one with the swan on the cover?
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know that album.
I don't remember the name of the album, but see there again, I remember album covers more than
Mm-hmm.
I remember the actual name of the album. But that one and Big Thing both were huge.
Yeah. Bob Dylan's Desire album. The whole thing, it's like 6 songs, but they're all like 10 minutes
Mm-hmm.
long. Every single one of them's a story. Man, that'll do it. I
I
listened to
like
that
Blood
one a
on the
lot.
Tracks.
That's a good one too. That's got
I liked I liked Springsteen's Darkness on the Edge of Town. I love that album. I listen to that
I'm on Nebraska.
constantly.
Um,
Nebraska's great too.
yeah,
Nebraska's one of those dark, depressing albums
I
that
can't
just
make it through it, but it every every time I listen, I'm inspired. Like
yeah, it's great.
there's
He wrote that back when he was legitimately still hungry.
yeah, and he like said it. He sat in his room and wrote like did the whole thing, like recorded the whole thing by himself. It was like these are gonna be
Mm-hmm.
demos, and then like the band's like they made it like too good. It needs to be like
Mm-hmm.
this. So
Yep, it's got to be stripped
well,
down.
that's an important thing too. I'm not gonna go into that's been lost. Like you need stories that kick your butt. You need
Mm-hmm.
that story of this guy made this in his room. Why can't
Mm-hmm.
I do that?
Yeah.
You need those things that humble the crap out of you and make you go, you know what? I am gonna stay up, or I am gonna get up early and do this. Um, I'm trying to think of any other big. There's well, I know I'm gonna think of like 5 groups or 5 artists as soon as I disconnect.
Well, you had some of those artists, and like Springsteen is one of them for me. That just every once in a while he could pen a lyric that just cut right through everything and gave you a it suggested a whole saga to you
Yeah.
in one line. I remember like in Born to Run, there's a
Yep.
line that
I was just
always
thinking
does
Born to
this
Run.
to me.
I hope it's the same
It
one.
does.
Please go ahead.
There's a line in that song where it's talking about all the the guys that had been turned down before by this girl. It says they haunt this dusty beach road in the skeleton frames of burned out Chevrolets, and like I never hear that line without thinking of like there's immediately like there's so many stories that one line can tell.
Is that Born to Run?
I think, or is that Thunder Road?
That's
Thunder
Thunder
Road.
Road. The one I'm thinking
Yeah, that's
of,
Thunder
the
Road.
one I'm thinking of, Born to Run is the first it's the first line of the third or fourth verse, the third verse, because the highway's jammed with broken heroes on a last chance power drive.
Yep,
like,
that's great,
like,
man.
dude, come on, man. How do you write that?
Well, and the best version of that song was there back in the 90s. He did a version of that song live where the whole band took a break and he played. You can find the video of it. He plays it just the acoustic guitar
Oh
and he
man.
has the harmonica rig,
Yeah.
and it's like a slowed down version of it. Dude, that it wrecks me every time.
You like cry.
Every single time.
Oh, I think I found it.
Because like he kind of comes back to it from a different place in life than he was when he wrote it.
He's got the shirtless arm, or the armless shirt, the shirtless arm. Well, technically his arm is shirtless.
If anybody could have got away with it, it would have been him. Yeah, that's the video. You need to listen to that when we get done here, because it's so good. But like he's coming at that song from a different place in life, and it like changes the whole mood of the song. It's so cool.
I made this joke online, and I hope I made somebody mad. Like just like I hope I made a lot of 20-year-olds mad. But it was like I said all of pop punk is like a failed attempt to surpass Born to Run. Because like
that's true, man.
That song is every pop punk song of what they wish it was. Like I want to get out of this town with my girl and my friends or whatever. It's like, dude, Born to Run already did that. And they did it. He did it so much better than you'll ever do it. Man. Yeah, the highway's jammed with broken heroes on a last chance power drive. Like every time I hear that, I'm like, "Gah!" Where did you get that, Bruce? Where did you? Yeah, I'm trying. I mean, I wish I could dig them out. I know for a fact I used to make mixed CDs of stuff to listen to, like to write with. I also think that there's a difference between creative, like stuff that inspires you and stuff that helps you focus. And I think and to go back around, I think that's what most people give on their list when they're talking about like what they create with. I think they're talking focus and discipline, which for me was like Metallica's S&M and Tool. But as far as inspiration,
I got one more album that popped up just now into my head when you said that, and it's one of their least celebrated albums, most underrated album they ever put out. But Pink Floyd, The Division Bell.
Oh, nice.
And a lot of people didn't like that album, and I don't care why. I know it sounds a lot different from the old stuff. I don't care
why.
That album has a couple of songs that just like take me to a completely different place.
Yeah.
And like I don't even know how to describe it, but there's a song on there called High Hopes. And then there's one
which for them sounds like sarcasm.
Well, it's not a hopeful song really, but High Hopes Coming Back to Life. Those two songs are so they just like High Hopes especially. It puts you in another world. It's like space travel.
Yeah,
it's insane.
I'm trying to think. I know I've got one more at least in me from that realm that always inspires you every time you listen to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
You need to listen to High Hopes from that album. I'm telling you, and it's one of those songs that just builds and builds and builds.
You're
Oh,
like, and you're like, oh, my heart.
I'm about to go listen to it again before I go to
You just
bed.
won't sleep. you,
Well,
as soon as,
listening to Pink Floyd before going to bed is not advisable.
as soon as you finish on your playlist, "Come Sweet Death" from End of Evangelion's gonna come on. It's gonna just
And
be,
fly me
it's,
to the
it's
moon.
just gonna be like you laying at the ground. You're gonna be on the stretcher like Ray.
No, I'm gonna be hunched over in the chair
Or like
like
it's
Shinji.
gonna be half of your face in the tub water.
Like, why is the water all brown?
It's gonna be your cats standing on the shore looking at you on the sink watching you. Now you have to make that picture.
Ah, jeez.
Tell you what, we'll make a playlist, and we'll send it for the mailing list like this week. That'll
Yeah,
be
that's a
fun.
great
Yeah,
idea.
we'll attach that
That's a
to it,
great idea.
but of everything we
I
like.
like that.
But yeah, I think that's a good place. I think that's a good place to cut it because we could go on for like another. We'll start doing some longer form ones whenever we get into like Patreon and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
but yeah, if you guys have any suggestions, let us know. But I'd love to hear opinions on it. I do think there's a difference between stuff that like inspires and stuff that focuses. And I think we have a lot of focus now on the focus stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, but then again, that goes back to our idea. I think there's a lot of guys over here instead of over here when you need.
Mm-hmm. In the chaos.
Yeah, but um, book's almost done, Josh. It's in a
Very,
good
very
place.
close. Very,
Yep.
very close. I might have 10 pages at the most left.
Yeah.
I think I'm very close to finish. I got to go back and make a couple of, adjustments to some of the previous pages, but that's negligible. So if you haven't done it yet, like, subscribe,
Mm-hmm.
join the
Sign up.
mailing list, GODFOEuniverse.com. Go to legacycomics.com and purchase the ash can if you haven't done that yet. And it won't be long at all before we have this first volume up and available for you. We just got to go through all the proper channels. Lots of cool stuff coming, lots of stuff happening. So get on board, share, talk about it.
And get excited for it. It's gonna be
Yeah, because
awesome.
it's gonna be dope. We're gonna
Yep.
rock your world.
All right, we'll holler at you later, guys. See ya.
Peace.